Have you ever found yourself sitting alone in a quiet room? Not because you wanted to, but because there just wasn't much else to do. The television hums softly in the background. A half-finished cup of tea sits warm by your side. The clock ticks, slowly, steadily. And you wonder, not loudly, not with panic, but just wonder, is this what getting older feels like? You're not sick, you're not in pain, but somehow, the spark feels dimmer. Not gone, no, just quieter. There's no one to ask if you're okay, not because they don't care, but because you've always been the strong one, the reliable one, the one who says, I'm fine, even when part of you isn't sure anymore. And somewhere between that second cup of tea and the evening news, a question lingers you rarely say aloud. What happened to the version of me that felt alive? If this sounds even a little familiar, then you, my friend, are in the right place. Because today, we're going to talk about something most people shy away from, especially when we get older, especially when we're men, especially when the world tells us we should already have moved on from this. But what if I told you that there's a key, a quiet, natural, overlooked key to feeling more vibrant, more connected, and even living longer? Yes, longer. Science isn't whispering this anymore, it's speaking clearly. And that key is something as simple and as misunderstood as pleasure. Now wait. Before you look away or dismiss this, hear me out. This isn't about shame. It isn't about youthful obsession or inappropriate longing. It's about something deeply human, something biology built into you, something that, far from being a fading relic of youth, might actually be your body's secret language of resilience. It's about self-touch, intimacy with yourself, masturbation, a word that has made many men freeze up or laugh it off or bury it behind decades of silence. But today, we're going to speak of it with dignity, with truth, and most importantly, with hope. Because for older men, especially those over 60, this isn't just about pleasure. It's about prostate health, heart strength, hormonal balance, sleep, mood, and even memory. It's about restoring the relationship with your own body, not out of vanity, but out of care. And isn't that what real health is? Let me ask you something quietly. When was the last time you touched yourself? Not out of impulse, but with the intention to care. When was the last time you let your body guide the conversation instead of ignoring its needs? When was the last time you felt fully connected, not to someone else, but to you? You see, this isn't just a private topic. It's a missing piece of a very public conversation about healthy aging. And the more we silence it, the more we lose out on the very benefits we say we're searching for. Today, we start changing that. Not by shouting, not by scandalizing, but by reclaiming something simple, quiet, powerful, ours. And if you've ever felt tired, if you've ever struggled with sleep, if you've worried about prostate trouble, or just wondered why your mood feels off more often than not, then know this: you are not broken. You are not alone. You are simply waiting for a new conversation, one rooted in science, in self-respect, and in the reminder that your health is not behind you. It's still within your reach. If even a small part of you feels seen right now, I invite you to stay with me. Because what comes next might change the way you see aging altogether. And if this feels personal, that's because it is. You deserve to feel whole. You deserve to live on your terms. And yes, you deserve pleasure that strengthens your body, not weakens it. Let's begin. And if anything in this intro resonated, if you have ever quietly wondered if there's more to your later years than pills and aches, leave a number 6 in the comments, not because I need it, but because it tells you you're not the only one. So let's make one thing very clear. This isn't just about touching your body. It's about touching your life again. Because aging isn't just a number. It's a series of quiet changes, some expected, some not. Your sleep shifts, your energy dips. The way your body responds to touch, to food, to silence, changes. But here's the most powerful truth. Those changes aren't signs of failure. They're invitations. Whispers from your biology that say, you're not done yet, but you may need to start listening differently. So what is the goal of this conversation? Simple. To show you that self-connection, through something as natural as masturbation, is not a leftover luxury of youth. It's a vital tool for staying physically strong, mentally sharp, emotionally calm, and yes, spiritually whole. We're going to explore that in detail. We'll talk about your heart, your prostate, your mood, your sleep, and most of all, your sense of self-trust. Because every time you listen to your body, instead of silencing it, you build trust with it again. And at this stage in life, that trust is everything. Now, allow me to bring you somewhere. Picture this. It's a late afternoon in October, the kind of day where the sunlight has that soft, golden stretch, and the wind smells like dried leaves and memory. You're in your own home, a house that's quieter than it used to be. Maybe the kids have grown. Maybe your partner is gone. Or maybe, just maybe, that they're still around, but the connection feels thinner somehow. You've done your part, worked hard, saved, provided. You've kept everything running, didn't you? But now, with less noise around, you start to hear things you didn't before. The ache in your hip, the shortness of breath after climbing stairs, the way your mind drifts in the evenings, not to people, but to a feeling. That feeling of aliveness, not adrenaline, not urgency, but something warmer, a spark. You walk into your bedroom. It's clean, familiar, quiet. The curtains move gently with the breeze. There's a photo frame on your nightstand, a younger version of you smiling, standing tall, maybe with someone you loved. And for a moment, you sit on the edge of the bed, and you wonder, where did that man go? Not out of pity, but out of curiosity, because something in you still feels him there, like an ember under ash. And maybe, just maybe, you don't need to become him again. But you'd like to hear from him, just once more. This is the setting we begin in. Not a clinic, not a lab, but right here, in the soft, lived-in space of your own home, your own memory, your own body. You don't need a gym. You don't need new equipment. You don't need a prescription. What you need is permission. Permission to reconnect, to feel, to reclaim what was never truly lost, just buried. And yes, I know, this isn't the kind of thing people your age talk about at dinner. This isn't what your doctor brought up last checkup. This isn't what your kids ask you about over the phone. But here, in this quiet moment, we're not doing this for them. We're doing this for you. Because you deserve not just more years, but more life in those years. And science is finally catching up to what many elders have whispered for generations. The body stays younger when it's acknowledged, when it's used, loved, touched, appreciated. Now, some people might ask, but isn't that selfish? Isn't that something we're supposed to leave behind in our youth? Isn't this embarrassing? To them we say, what's more natural than caring for the home you live in every day, your body? What's more responsible than tending to the parts of you that impact your health, your rest, your confidence, your clarity? And what's more human than reminding yourself, with a touch, a breath, a heartbeat, that you are still here, not broken, not used up, but ripe, seasoned, capable of joy? This journey isn't about becoming someone you used to be. It's about becoming someone you may have never given yourself permission to fully be. A man who understands that self-care is not shameful. A man who knows that health isn't only about numbers on a chart, but about the tone of your mornings, the ease in your chest, the clarity in your thoughts, and the peace in your nights. So yes, our goal today is simple. To reclaim the kind of pleasure that doesn't leave you feeling guilty, but grateful. The kind that strengthens your body instead of draining it. The kind that science supports. The kind your future self, 10 years from now, might thank you for. Not just for the extra years, but for the way you felt in them. The night was quiet. Not the peaceful kind, but the kind that made every tick of the old wall clock sound like a drum beat in Mr. Thomas's chest. It was 2:47 a.m. Again. He opened his eyes, slowly, not because he had a bad dream, but because he hadn't really been sleeping at all. The sheets were warm where he lay, but cold on the other side of the bed. That coldness was something he had learned to live with. It wasn't the bed, it wasn't the room, it wasn't the season. It was something deeper, a quiet tension, right below the skin, settled in the belly, lingering at the base of the neck. It had no name, only a weight. Mr. Thomas sat up, careful not to wake anyone, though no one else lived here. He reached for his slippers, walked slowly to the kitchen, and turned on the small kettle. Not for tea, just for the sound. The familiar hum, the hiss of steam. It was something alive, at least. He didn't feel sad, not exactly, but neither did he feel anything. That was the part that worried him most. He remembered years ago waking in the night because of a thunderstorm, or a child's cry, or a sudden idea too good to sleep on. But now, he woke up simply because something inside him no longer settled. And what surprised him, what quietly shook him, was how normal it had become. At his last checkup, his vitals were stable. His cholesterol was borderline. His knees ached more than last winter. But none of those things explained why he couldn't feel tired at the right time, why mornings felt like echoes of the night before, why emotions, even joy, seemed to come from a room down the hall rather than from inside his chest. He remembered a phrase he'd read once in a medical article. Low emotional tone. It had struck him, because that's exactly what it felt like his life was being played in a key just slightly too flat. Not off, not broken, just dimmer. Mr. Thomas didn't speak about this with anyone. Not his son, who was too busy, too far. Not his neighbor, who only talked about the weather. Not even the nurse at his clinic, because what would he say? I don't feel much these days. I'm not sad, but I'm not anything. He feared the look he might get. Pity, maybe, or worse, indifference. And so, he said nothing. And he kept waking up at 2:47, again, and again, until one morning he found himself standing in the bathroom mirror, studying his own eyes. They weren't dull, but they looked tired of pretending. He leaned in, cupped some water in his hand, splashed his face, and whispered out loud, though no one could hear, "What's missing?" The water trickled down his chin. There was no answer, only a breath, then another. And in that stillness, for just a moment, he remembered something. A kind of touch, a private rhythm, an old forgotten gesture that had once made his whole body feel warm. Not lustful, not wild, but alive. He had pushed it aside for years, not because he didn't want it, but because somewhere along the line, he was told it no longer belonged to him. That day, Mr. Thomas decided to make a small change. Nothing big, nothing loud. He didn't call anyone. He didn't make a plan. He just turned off the television a little earlier, dimmed the bedroom lights, lit a candle, and sat on his bed, not to sleep, but to feel. He placed one hand over his chest, breathed slowly, and asked again, this time inwardly, "What's missing that I can give back to myself?" His hand didn't move with urgency. It moved with permission. And that night, he didn't fall asleep right away. But when he finally did, it was deeper, quieter, like something had been returned, not fixed, not healed, just acknowledged. And that was a beginning. It started with a folded newspaper. Mr. Thomas didn't usually read the health section. Too much about diets he'd never follow, pills with names he couldn't pronounce, and articles written in that sterile, forgettable voice, as if aging were a technical problem to fix instead of a human experience to understand. But that morning, as he sat at his kitchen table, toast untouched, tea cooling beside him, a headline caught his eye. Harvard study links regular ejaculation to lower risk of prostate cancer. He blinked, read it again. Then, slowly, he unfolded the page. It was a summary of a study published by researchers at Harvard Medical School. Large scale, over 30,000 men, followed for almost 2 decades. And the finding was simple, almost absurdly so. Men who ejaculated more frequently, around 21 times per month, had a significantly lower risk of developing prostate cancer than those who did not. Mr. Thomas raised an eyebrow. 21 times? He muttered. He wasn't even sure he had the energy to walk 21 blocks these days. Still, he read on, the researchers weren't promoting anything reckless or obsessive. They were clear. It didn't have to involve a partner. In fact, the benefit was the same whether it came from partnered sex or masturbation. The key factor wasn't romance. It was release. Consistent, gentle, natural release. And the proposed reason? Regular ejaculation may help clear the prostate of potentially harmful fluids, reduce congestion, decrease inflammation, and perhaps even reduce cancer risk. He leaned back in his chair. Suddenly, toast seemed irrelevant. What struck him wasn't just the data, but the quiet validation he felt reading it. This thing, this instinct he had been taught to feel shame around, was now being discussed by Harvard scientists, with bar graphs and citations and serious faces. And it made him wonder, how many other parts of his health had been quietly silenced, not by science, but by society. He thought about his late wife. In their last years together, intimacy had changed, not vanished, but softened. It wasn't always physical. Sometimes it was the way she rested her hand on his chest, or how they sat in silence and somehow still felt heard. After she passed, he shut that door. Told himself it was better that way. He focused on practical things, grocery lists, bills, gardening. He kept his hands busy and his body quiet. But now, as he looked at this article, written in plain ink, published in a trusted journal, something shifted. A thought returned to him, one he had buried beneath years of politeness and guilt. This body still belongs to me. That evening, he printed the article, not because he needed to prove anything, but because he wanted to see it, hold it, place it beside the rest of his health documents, as if to say, this too is part of my care. The next day, during his follow-up appointment with Dr. Elaine Harper, he brought it with him. She smiled as he placed it on the desk. I read this yesterday, he said almost defensively. I wasn't sure if it was real. She adjusted her glasses, scanned the first few lines, then nodded. It's real, she said gently. And it's not new, just rarely talked about. He paused. The room felt both heavy and safe. Why didn't anyone mention this before? He asked. Because for a long time, Mr. Thomas, she said, people confused modesty with medicine. That sentence sat with him all week. Confused modesty with medicine. It explained so much. The silence, the discomfort, the lack of honest conversation around male aging. And it affirmed what he was beginning to feel deep in his bones. That pleasure, even solo, even quiet, wasn't a threat to his dignity. It was a tool, a gentle, accessible, effective tool for protecting the parts of him that still wanted to thrive. He remembered one line from the article that stayed with him. Sexual expression in older age is not a luxury, it is a component of health. Not a luxury, not a leftover, not a guilty indulgence, but a component of health, just like walking, just like hydration, just like sleep. And the prostate, this small gland that most men don't think about until it causes problems, suddenly felt like a symbol, not of weakness, but of opportunity, to listen, to act, to choose care over neglect, to say, I matter enough to pay attention, even to this. Later that week, Mr. Thomas began adjusting his routine, not drastically, just with quiet intention. He'd go to bed 30 minutes earlier, turn off the lights, lie down, not to sleep right away, but to check in with his body. And when the moment felt right, when breath and thought aligned, he gave himself permission, not just to release, but to belong in his skin again. And afterward, he noticed something strange. He wasn't just sleeping better. He was waking up with energy. That heavy fog that had hung over his mornings began to lift. He felt clearer, lighter, a little more himself. It wasn't magic. It wasn't instant transformation. But it was real. And the best part? It came from within. No prescription, no permission slip. Just a shift in how he saw himself. Not as too old, not as past that, but as a man who still had things worth caring for, especially his own health, especially his own heart, especially his own joy. There's something strange about the way confidence works. It doesn't usually announce itself. It doesn't arrive with applause. And it certainly doesn't ask permission. It shows up quietly, in how you stand, in how you breathe, in the choices you make when no one's watching. And for Mr. Thomas, confidence had recently begun to return, not all at once, but in small, steady waves. It started with awareness, not of his posture or his appearance, but of muscles he'd never thought about before. Specifically, the ones beneath him. It was Dr. Elaine Harper again. At his next visit, they were reviewing his sleep, his mood, and that article he'd brought in 2 weeks ago. She seemed pleased. He looked better, sounded more rested, and just as she was about to wrap up the appointment, she paused. "Do you mind if we talk about your pelvic floor?" she asked casually, as if asking about his shoulders or feet. Mr. Thomas blinked. "Isn't that a woman's thing?" he asked, genuinely confused. She smiled. "It's a human thing," she said. "And for men your age, especially. It's a powerful foundation for bladder control, sexual function, and overall energy." He raised an eyebrow. "Energy?" "Absolutely," she nodded. "Most men don't realize how much their pelvic floor supports everyday vitality. When it weakens, you might feel leaks, fatigue, difficulty getting or maintaining erections, even back discomfort. That got his attention. "But the good news," she continued, "is that it can be trained like any other muscle." Later that day, Mr. Thomas sat at his kitchen table, Googling phrases he'd never typed in his life. Male Kegel exercises, how to strengthen pelvic floor after 60, bladder control in older men. At first, it felt odd. The guides were mostly basic. Tighten the muscles you'd use to stop urinating. Hold for 5 seconds, release, repeat. Simple enough, he thought. He gave it a try, sitting quietly, just breathing, contracting gently, then letting go. It felt surprisingly empowering, like he had found a part of his body that had been waiting for acknowledgement, not neglected, just ignored. And when he stood up, he felt different, grounded, aware, present in a way that didn't require mirrors or motion, just presence. Over the next week, it became part of his routine, while brushing his teeth, while waiting for the kettle to boil, while reading the newspaper. 3 seconds in, 3 seconds out. Little by little, he started feeling not only stronger down there, but steadier up here. His thoughts were clearer, his gait more relaxed. Even his conversations felt easier. He wasn't performing. He wasn't chasing youth. He was simply inhabiting himself more fully. And one afternoon, as he walked through the park near his home, watching the sunlight dance on the leaves, he passed by a younger man jogging, earbuds in, sweating, and sprinting like the world depended on it. Mr. Thomas didn't envy him. He didn't wish for that body, that pace, that noise. What he felt was quiet pride. Because in that moment, he realized he had claimed something the younger man might not even know he had yet. Ease, not laziness, not stillness, but the ease that comes from knowing what matters and tending to it with care. That night, he wrote in his notebook, just a few lines, nothing poetic, just truth. I feel more like myself than I have in years, not because I've changed everything, but because I stopped ignoring what wanted attention. He didn't mean big things, not his finances, not his career, not even his children. He meant his breath, his touch, his internal strength, the kind you build in silence, with intention, with care. And when he lay down that night, he did not turn on the television. He did not check the news. He simply checked in, with his body, his breath, his self, and he smiled. Because for the first time in a long time, he wasn't falling asleep from exhaustion. He was falling asleep at peace. The next morning, something small happened. He walked past the bathroom mirror, glanced sideways at his reflection, and without stopping, he whispered to himself, "Hello, again." No fanfare, no drama, just a man, returning to himself. Not as who he used to be, not as who others expected, but as someone who understood now, deeply, that vitality isn't about what you've lost. It's about what you're willing to reclaim, even quietly, even alone, even now. It was early morning, the kind of morning that doesn't announce itself. No dramatic sunrise, no birdsong fanfare, just a soft light, gathering behind the curtains like a polite visitor. Mr. Thomas stirred before his alarm, not out of urgency, but out of readiness. He sat up slowly, feet touching the floor like he was greeting an old friend. He took a breath, then another, and something inside him held steady. There was no ache in his chest, no swirl of half-forgotten dreams, just a calm, centered hum, like his body had finally caught up to his mind. He stood, walked to the sink, splashed water on his face, and when he looked into the mirror this time, he didn't search for anything. He simply looked, and what he saw wasn't just an aging man. He saw a man who had returned to himself. For weeks, maybe months, maybe years. He had been moving through life like a background character, doing what needed to be done, saying what was expected, smiling when it felt appropriate. But something had always been, just behind the curtain, something untouched, unheard, unseen. And now, after small acts of listening, after slow mornings and even slower evenings, after breathing deeply and touching gently, he could finally name it. I had forgotten how to feel like me, not like someone younger, not like someone stronger, not like someone else, just himself. He walked into the living room. The chair where he always read the paper was waiting, but today he didn't sit. He walked to the window instead, pulled open the curtain, let the full morning spill in, and in that golden light, with dust dancing like tiny stars, he whispered aloud, not to anyone else, not even to himself, but to that quiet something that had waited patiently inside him for years. Thank you for not giving up on me. And in that moment, he didn't feel old. He didn't feel broken. He didn't feel small. He felt whole. You see, the climax in a man's life doesn't always come with a trophy. It doesn't always come with applause. Sometimes, it comes in a single breath, a glance in the mirror, A shift so subtle you almost miss it. But it changes everything. Because once you feel alive again, truly, deeply alive, you can't unknow that feeling. And more importantly, you don't want to. That morning, Mr. Thomas went about his day. He watered his plants. He made breakfast. He called his son, not for anything urgent, just to say, "I'm doing well." And he meant it. Later, while folding laundry, he laughed at himself. Not because of a joke, not because of a memory, but because he suddenly realized, for the first time in what felt like forever, I don't feel like I'm fading anymore. That was it. No big scene, no transformation montage, just presence. A man, in his body, with his breath, with his strength, with his quiet, powerful right to feel, to live, to rest, to desire, to belong. Even now, especially now, and maybe, just maybe, you're feeling something stir too. A gentle reminder that the person you once were is not gone. He's waiting. He's breathing beneath the surface of shoulds and used to and not anymore. And you don't have to go backward to find him. You only have to stop, listen, and touch back in, just as Mr. Thomas did, just as you can, today, tomorrow, or quietly, tonight. There's something about mornings. They arrive without asking. They offer a clean page, whether we're ready or not. And they always ask us the same quiet question. How do you want to begin? For Mr. Thomas, the answer had slowly changed. He no longer reached for distractions. He no longer rushed to fill the silence. Instead, he had begun to build his mornings like a small ritual. A glass of water, a moment of breath, a touch of his own skin, a glance toward the light. But there was one more thing. One more small habit that had become part of his rebirth. His breakfast. It sounds simple, doesn't it? But what you eat, especially in the first hour of your day, can shape everything that follows. Your energy, your mood, your hormone balance, even your testosterone levels, your heart function, your muscle strength. What if the thing you've been pouring into a bowl every morning for years, that sugary cereal, that white toast, that glass of orange juice, was quietly draining the very vitality you've been trying to reclaim? And what if a small shift, just one or two ingredients, could unlock the next layer of strength, clarity, and stamina? Not a supplement, not a fad diet, just real food, in real time, supporting a body that's ready to feel alive again. We've spent this time exploring the quiet power of self-connection, of honoring your body's needs, of remembering that pleasure, strength, and rest are not reserved for the young. But this journey isn't over, because there's another piece to the puzzle, one you touch every single morning. And I'll ask you gently, what's in your breakfast that's been quietly aging you faster? And what one change could help your body rebuild, repair, and revitalize without even leaving the kitchen? We'll talk about that soon, because this story isn't done yet, and neither are you. So take one last breath with me. Place a hand on your chest and listen. Your body isn't asking for perfection. It's asking for attention. And tomorrow morning, as you prepare your first bite of the day, ask yourself, is this food helping me come alive or helping me disappear? We'll answer that together in the next chapter. So here we are, not at the end, but at a kind of beginning. You've sat with a story. You've listened to a man who could have been anyone, or maybe in some way, was you. You've walked with him through silence, through confusion, through rediscovery, through science and sensation. And you've heard, maybe for the first time in a long time, that what you feel matters, that what you need isn't foolish, that what brings you back to life might be quieter, gentler, and more natural than anyone ever told you. You are not behind, you are not broken, and you are certainly not past your prime. You are in a season of wisdom, of permission, of choosing what serves you now, not what used to, not what others expect, but what lets you wake up and say, yes, I feel more like myself again. And isn't that what real health is? Not a number, not a checklist, but a moment, however small, where your body and your breath are in the same room again, and at peace. So what now? You don't need to rush. You don't need to change everything. You don't need to explain anything to anyone. You only need to begin. Maybe tonight you dim the lights a little earlier. Maybe tomorrow you stand at the window for a moment longer than usual. Maybe this week you sit with your own reflection, not to judge, but to say, hello again. And maybe, when you're ready, you place your hand on your chest and let that be enough. A start, a return, a reconnection with something you were never meant to lose. And if this story meant something to you, if it stirred something even quietly, I invite you to do 3 gentle things. 1. Leave a small comment below. A number, a word, a whisper. It tells the world, and yourself, I'm here. I heard this. I matter. 2. Share this with someone who might need to remember their body is still theirs. A brother, a friend, a partner, or maybe your future self. 3. If this resonated, if it reminded you that health isn't just physical, subscribe. Not just to this channel, but to the practice of returning, of caring, of staying awake to what your body still wants to say. This isn't about shame. This isn't about youth. This is about life, yours, and all the quiet, beautiful ways it still wants to unfold. So take this with you. The breath, the touch, the moment. And know this, you're not late, you're not done, you're just beginning again.